Over the last couple of months, I've been using the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus on and off as my main phone. Today I decided to talk about the specifications of the phone and review them to let people know if this is worth buying. This is a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus specs video. Hello everybody, my name is Matt and this is Real World Review. What I'm going to do is go over the specs of the phone, and at the end I will score the phone based on my personal experiences as a user and cell phone repairman. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section or on Twitter at MattofRWR. Let's get started. To start, our first category is the outside hardware. Let's start with that display. The display is a 6.2-inch dual-edge Super AMOLED screen with a resolution of 1440 by 2960, totaling 529 pixels per inch. The maximum screen brightness is super bright at over 1000 nits, which is extremely high for an AMOLED display. With this said, benchmarks show a brightness of about 565 nits, which is still pretty high. There is Corning Gorilla Glass 5 covering that curved AMOLED display, making the front scratch resistant. The screen to body ratio is about 84% and has extremely thin bezels. It has the 18:9 screen ratio that has very mixed opinions. But hey, it's the future. Let's talk about the rest of the front. We start with the top where the earpiece and the sensors are. There is a speaker grill that covers the earpiece, and to the right of that there is an 8-megapixel front camera along with the iris scanner. To the left of that is the proximity and ambient light sensors along with the infrared emitter. Oddly enough, this phone lacks a front-facing microphone. On the bottom portion there is a black bar. That's it. Moving on to the frame. On the bottom is a USB-C 3.1 port, a microphone, 5 open ovals for the loudspeaker, and a headset jack. On the right side there is a small power button. On the left side there is the volume up and volume down button along with a Bixby button. And on the top there is a single hole for the microphone and a tray that holds the SIM card and the memory card. On the back of the device is a 12-megapixel camera that is still slightly protruding out of the back. To the right of that is a fingerprint sensor. To the left of that is a single LED flash unit and a heart rate monitor. Under all of this is a slightly curved piece of glass. As for the size, the device is 159.5 millimeters tall, 73.4 millimeters wide, and 8.1 millimeters thick, or 6.28 inches tall, 2.89 inches wide, and 0.32 inches thick. As for the weight, the S8 Plus is 173 grams, or 6.1 ounces. The phone is water resistant, but it does not have a user removable battery or back. And now we move on to the cameras. There is a 12-megapixel sensor with a single LED flash and dual pixel autofocus. The aperture is f1.7 and the pixel size is 1.4 micrometers. The phone supports different camera features like optical image stabilization, raw image capture, hyperlapse, and high dynamic range. The rear camera can record video in a couple of ways. You can record 4K at 30 frames per second, 1440 at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, 720p at 30 frames per second, and slow motion video can be captured at 720p at 240 frames per second. Oddly enough, the phone allows for one-to-one capture of 1440p at 30 frames per second and 18.5 by 9 at 1080p. I wouldn't use either, but if you're into those, it is perfect for you. The front camera is an 8-megapixel sensor with a f1.7 aperture. It allows for the max of 1440p recording at 30 frames per second. It's actually the same camera as the Note 8 and the Galaxy S9 Plus. The next category is the inside hardware. As usual, we start with the processor. The processor in this phone is the 64-bit Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chip. It is a 10nm octa-core processor with 4 cores running at 2.35 GHz and the other 4 cores running at 1.9 GHz. Geekbench gives the phone a score of around 1,846 for the single core and 6,310 for the multi-core test. The GPU is an Adreno 540 that runs at 710 MHz. When testing the GPU, Geekbench gives the phone a score of around 7,825. The phone has 4GB of LPDDR4 RAM, which is standard for most flagship phones. The model that I'm reviewing is a G955U and it is Verizon based. For some reason, however, putting a T-Mobile SIM card branded the phone into a T-Mobile phone, which is actually kind of cool. The phone supports 1G, 2G, 3G, and 4G, assuming that the market you're in supports those, along with LTE bands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25, 26, 28, 32, and 66. As for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi chip is the 802.11a b g n AC MIMO, and the Bluetooth is version 5.0. The phone also supports NFC, GPS, and GLONASS. The battery is a 3500 mAh lithium-ion cell that is supposed to last all day. Samsung claims that the battery will give you up to 24 hours of talk time and up to 15 hours of internet usage. The phone does support Quick Charge 2.0, and there is also fast wireless charging support, assuming that you have both of those chargers. Oddly enough, Quick Charge 3.0 and 4.0 have been left out of this phone, even though Snapdragon 835 devices are supposed to support 4.0. This phone comes out of the box with Android 7.0 Nougat and has been updated to Android 8.0 Oreo. Hopefully this phone gets updates for the next couple of years. Just know that the carrier-based ones get them last. This phone supports a bunch of different audio formats like FLAC, XMF, M4A, and WAV. As for video playback, the phone supports a few formats like MP4, WEBM, and MKV. Now that we have gone over the specs, it is time for us to give this phone a score. Note that this phone comes with 64 gigabytes and can be purchased new for about $690 to $755, depending on your carrier preference. You can find these phones with 128 gigabytes of memory, but it isn't that easy to purchase. This phone does take a memory card, so it shouldn't really matter too much. It should also be noted that this phone is a year old and most people will want to buy this phone used, and the scoring does account for that. Let's start with the frame. The phone is made out of glass and metal. The front is mainly glass and the back is also glass. Since the screen and the back are both curved, it makes them both easier to break. With this said, it does make the phone look fantastic. Over the years, Samsung has been making curved phones easier to hold in the hand, and this is no different. This design is almost the exact same as the S9 Plus, but that's a good thing. The back camera setup is very clean, but the fingerprint scanner is in a very weird place, especially if you're left-handed. Well, actually it's weird regardless if you're left or right-handed. Because of this, Samsung decided to take iris scanning out of the Note 7 and put it into this phone, which is a bonus. And it doesn't explode. With this said, I believe that face detection is more reliable and way quicker. I'm not a fan of these different color choices, but the glossy frame is a nice touch. If it was up to me, I would have bought the midnight black one. As for bending, I have not seen anyone bring in a bent S8 Plus, so that is definitely a good thing for durability. The Gorilla Glass 5 holds up well, but it isn't shatterproof. Overall, I will give the outside hardware an 8 out of 10. Next is the screen. As usual, AMOLED screens are my favorite, and this is no different. The crazy thing is that this screen is literally the same as the S9 Plus, which is cool for people buying this phone, but it will make people that own the S9 Plus a little bit bitter that they spent more money. Obviously, there's more to it, but you'll have to watch my review of the S9 Plus to learn more. Over the last year, I haven't experienced any screen burn-in, which is nice for me, but I will not ignore the fact that it does happen. I have seen people bring in this phone with screen burn, and it is unfortunate when that happens. As always, Samsung makes their images look amazing, and the Infinity screen makes it look even better. The screen rolls the image off, which looks cool, but I never use the edges to be more productive. You either like it or you don't, and if you don't like it, I recommend checking out the flat Samsung S8 Active. The screen size is definitely something to get used to, but 6.2 inches isn't much if you're coming from a Note device. Also, the 18.9 aspect ratio gives the phone much more screen and less bezel. Wait, didn't people complain that the iPhone 5's screen was too tall when it came out? Nah, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, let's just get back to the S8 Plus. The screen is pretty much the same as the S9 Plus, so the screen will get a 9 out of 10. Next is the inside hardware. The Snapdragon 835 processor was the top of the line in 2017, but it is still pretty awesome in 2018. The phone is definitely fast, and surprisingly the software helps with that. The 3500 mAh battery is large, but the performance is decent. Sure, you can get through the day, but it sucks knowing that this phone can't get you through 2 days with this large battery. I was using the Moto Z2 Force a little while ago, which has a 2730 mAh battery and the same processor, and it gives me dramatically better battery life. The loudspeaker is decent, but it lacks a stereo option. I would think that with the release of the iPhone 7 that Samsung would have copied this, but they left that for the S9 and the S9 Plus. As for memory, 64GB is decent, but the addition of the SD card slot is perfect. The phone gets warm as expected, but it isn't as bad as the Samsung S7 Edge, so that's a plus. I am still surprised that this phone does not support Quick Charge 3.0 or 4.0. Samsung, you have some explaining to do. Overall, I will give this phone a 7.5 out of 10 for the inside hardware. Next is the camera. As always on Samsung phones, the back camera is absolutely amazing. Not much has really changed though. The back camera is pretty much the same as the S7 camera other than the filming option because of the 18:9 screen on this phone. The front camera has been upgraded to an 8 megapixel sensor. It can also focus, which may not be a huge thing for some, but it is very interesting because even the iPhone X doesn't have this feature. Just like any other Samsung phones, images look warm overall. During the day, images look amazing, just as you would expect. Unfortunately, at night, they look overly saturated at times, and the colors seem to blend into each other. I still believe that this camera gets an 8.25 out of 10. Next is the software. The phone comes with Android 7.0 Nougat and has recently been updated to Android 8.0 Oreo. I'm not a fan of TouchWiz, but the Oreo update definitely makes the experience easier. Just like the S9, Samsung let off on major customization. There are, however, still some things that I do love that Samsung put in here, like the always-on display. With this said, there are probably things that I use on here that might be S8 exclusive, but they don't really stand out enough for me to bring it up. The nice thing is that Samsung leaves most of the stock Android features on this phone, so if you really wanted to, you can make this phone function similar to a Pixel device. The software never gets put into the scoring, but I will give it a decent 8 out of 10. The last score is the Futureproofing score. The phone has been out a year and there really haven't been any major issues with this phone. The battery seems to be working fine and I haven't seen any bloated batteries in the past year. I've given up on Samsung putting the infrared blaster back in the phone, but they did give us some pretty useful things. The USB-C port on the bottom is USB 3.1, which doesn't mean much today, but in the future it will be beneficial. The Snapdragon 835 processor is a year old, but it should still be perfect for the next 2 to 3 years. The battery is concerning since the battery life isn't that awesome already and will only get worse over time. Overall, I would say that this phone is future-proof and will get a 7 out of 10. Add up the scores and you get 39.75 out of 50, or 79.5%. This is an awesome upgrade over the S7 Edge because the design has changed so much, but it might be awkward for some people that like having the home button on the front. The virtual one takes some getting used to, but it isn't that bad. The phone is nice, but if you have the S7 Edge, I would definitely go for the S9 or the S9 Plus over the S8 Plus. And that's it. Let me know what else you want me to review in the comment section below or on Twitter at MattofRWR. And I have a question for you. Do you think that the fingerprint scanner is in a weird place? Let me know, and feel free to follow me on the social media listed above. Also, if you like these videos, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Every sub counts. Thanks for watching.